Hello and welcome to the Too Much Apparently podcast. If you're new here, this is a podcast for the deeply feeling, overthinking, emotionally overloaded humans who've been told they're too much apparently. And if you're back, thanks for choosing to sit with us again.
We're Alice and Carly, two therapists who are also just sensitive weirdos trying to make sense of life, healing, and our own brains. This isn't a professional advice podcast. It's more like the messy, honest conversations that happen when you finally feel safe enough to say what you're really thinking.
This space is for people like us, the ones who've been called too sensitive, too serious, too emotional, too intense, and have spent way too long believing that it's true.
Okay, on with the episode.
Today we're talking about being too scared to be seen.
This one's for anyone who wants connection, but feels exposed the moment they're actually visible.
The people who share something real and then immediately want to delete the message, disappear, or pretend it never happened.
We're talking about vulnerability, why it feels so risky, and why being seen can feel more like danger than comfort.
Let's get into it.
I think both you and I have been a bit at this episode title.
We definitely have, yeah. It seemed nice and easy when we had the title, but actually sitting down to talk about vulnerability and getting the balance right as a therapist, ethically, how much vulnerability can we show and how much do we need to keep back? It feels like a balance. You know, I'm happy to share that we actually rescheduled this episode because I felt too vulnerable to do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's hard when there are many things that we talk about week to week and some things that are a bit more in the past or that we're a bit more removed from. And of course, there are many things that we talk about that are still very much part of our everyday lives or come in and out of our lives and can make it, challenging to talk about. It's important for us to name that because there will be people listening where this episode maybe feels a bit tender.
Yeah. As vulnerability does.
Sure.
I don't think there is any way to get to a point where vulnerability feels comfortable. It just doesn't, I don't think it ever really works like that. I think it can get more comfortable in certain areas, but life happens, which is partly why we rescheduled this episode, because I was going through something and I needed a bit more space to think about how am I coming to this episode.
Yeah, and whilst everybody has moments of vulnerability in life, vulnerability is more of a feature of some people's life than others.
Yeah. And I'm thinking about the way that sensitivity ties into that if you're somebody that is more sensitive, you're almost certainly going to be more vulnerable because you're more in tune with your emotions and more aware of what's going on around you. So there's more to be impacted by and to be impacted more deeply.
Definitely. And I would also add to that, I think the reason why sensitivity can bring about more vulnerability is because we live in an insensitive world.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not necessarily that our sensitivity is causing the vulnerability in its entirety, where I guess when it's framed like that, it feels like a bad thing, but that there is so much that is outside of our control in terms of the way in which the world works, where then that creates more vulnerabilities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, we're kind of specifically here talking about not vulnerability as a whole, but what it is about being seen that can feel threatening.
Mm-hmm.
What it is about being perceived that brings about that sense of vulnerability, which brings about feeling threatened and finding that really difficult. And because of that, why many of us might get into sometimes conscious, sometimes an unconscious process of trying to not be seen, trying to not be heard, wanting to blend in more with the wallpaper because it feels safer, and yet still harbor often that deep desire to be seen. It feels like such a contrast, doesn't it? In terms of both wanting, I want you to see me, and also, please God, do not see me.
Yeah, it's making me think about what it's been like to do this podcast, because like before we started this podcast, the thought of it terrified me, absolutely terrified me. And I didn't ever stop being terrified by the idea of doing it. I think I was just getting to a point of being tired of feeling so terrified.
Yes.
So I knew, and I've had times like this in the past. So when I was younger, I used to be really scared of using the phone and making phone calls. So I got a job in a call center, which kind of moved me past a little bit of that. But with the podcast, it's felt even trickier because I'm not just doing phone calls about where's my package and when's it going to be delivered. This is about who I am and to some extent the things that I struggle with. And it is quite a vulnerable thing to do. I suppose I just wanted to name that. I think because I used to see other people doing things like this, not necessarily podcasts, but like other things. And I'd kind of look at them and be like, how do they do that? Like, how do they like not be scared?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't think it is. And I think where my confidence has come from doing the podcast is in getting the positive feedback that I never would have got if I hadn't put myself out there.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's no denying that doing a podcast where you're talking about personal experience is, of course, a vulnerable thing to do and put out there. It's very different if we were having a podcast talking about, I don't even know, I can't even think of what to say now. I
The
don't know.
weather.
Yeah, talking about furniture. Yeah, it is deeply personal. And so, yeah, I felt very similarly.
Mm.
Where there is a difference for me in terms of being perceived is it makes a great, great difference when eyes are actually on me.
Mm-hmm.
So whilst doing this did feel vulnerable, can still feel vulnerable and difficult in terms of some of the things that we say and that we put out there. It's not too bad because we're having a conversation, we record it, we put it out there, and then it's out there.
Mm-hmm.
And in quite a passive way, we just know that people are listening, which is very different to. So lately, I've been thinking about you and I doing an episode live
Oh, okay.
where people come and join the call
Yeah.
and we talk because
Yeah.
many people do that, which would be a great way to connect with people who are listening.
Mm-hmm.
Because we've both spoken about we want to start to make this feel more like a community space where there's more engagement with each other.
Yeah.
And so one of the ways that many podcasts do that is through doing, live recordings. But that takes on a whole new thing for me in terms of people's eyes will be there.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so it's like, what will we do when we lose our train of thought, when we're bumbling over our words and we can edit those bits out? What was it? Someone made a comment recently that you shared with me where they said how eloquently we speak. And I'm thinking, oh, well, we edit it. So that's maybe why it feels like that. Maybe we are eloquent
Yeah,
sometimes.
I was going to say, I feel like you're talking yourself down a bit there. We edit out ums and ahs. I don't think that changes the eloquence of what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's difficult when sometimes you just feel a bit bumbly or,
Mm.
when you have brain fog and the wrong word comes out of your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
What it would be like to be being observed live as we do this.
Yeah.
But that is something that's always been a big difficulty for me. A good example is I've always wanted to go to acting classes. I love theatre and I have this fantasy about being on a stage. And I wanted to do some acting classes, but the idea of going to something in person just felt really overwhelming. But during COVID, I decided to join an online acting class.
Okay.
And it was, don't get me wrong, it was hard. And I was like really shaking as I was doing the class and the kind of things that you had to do, where you had to like the typical things like get up out of your seat and, I don't know, be a lion or be this, that, or the other. Is just a bit of a loosening up exercise. It was difficult. However, I was able to do it because eyes weren't physically on me.
Mm-hmm.
Because even though the screen was there, I could close the screen down. I could close the window so the eyes didn't look at me when it was my turn to act a part or do something. I could just close that down and do it to a
Yeah.
camera.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Whereas it would be a totally different story if I then had to do that in person in
Yeah.
front of somebody.
So I think I'm actually a bit different in that it would be different with a live episode because that would obviously still go out and be published. But there's something for me about doing something live that's not recorded and then like doing this, which is recorded and it's on the internet and anybody can look at it. Whereas doing something live, like you know who's there, and you know if they've come to see you, then probably they want you to, they want you to do well. And so as part of my my master's degree that I'm doing, we have to do teach backs to people. So we learn a little bit of theory and then we teach it back to the rest of the class. which past me would have found so overwhelming. And actually, just this last weekend, I was so tired that I went to do my bit and I was like, I can't get my words out. So the rest of my group kind of carried on talking and I picked up a bit towards the end. But yeah, I think in some ways I feel the eyes anyway when we're here. Like when we're talking before an episode, that feels completely different to when we're recording it and I know it's going out. Like I can feel the eyes. Like there's even certain people that I have in my mind when we're
Oh,
doing the
okay.
episode sometimes. Yeah, so it feels like that's there anyway. I'm really curious. I'm really keen to do a live episode. I think that would be a really good idea. And it would be really interesting to see actually what difference, does that make in terms of what it feels like. But I know it is a really common thing for people to struggle with being seen, like eyes on you seen.
Yeah, I have another good example, and I've just realized something happens in my nervous system that I just seem to not be able to control.
Mm-hmm.
So I have had singing lessons for over 10 years on and off with the same singing teacher.
Mm-hmm.
She is a warm, encouraging, genuinely lovely, safe person.
Mm-hmm.
And I still can't truly sing freely in front of her,
Mm.
despite having done it for nearly 10 years.
Yeah.
Because there is something in me. Obviously, I sing, but what tends to happen is I will sing, but my body still goes into freeze. So
Yeah.
I'm singing as like that rabbit in the headlights.
Mm.
Whereas at home, of course, my body will be free. I will move. I'll use my hands. I'll have facial expressions and gestures, like I'll get into the emotion of the song.
Mm-hmm.
I perform it when I'm at home on my own. But the moment that anybody's eyes are on me,
Yeah.
all of that closes in. Everything gets incredibly small, tense,
Mm-hmm.
tight. And then I just sing from that position.
Yeah.
And I've tried to do so much work about just move your arms, just move them. It's almost like, I don't know, what am I supposed to do with these now? They feel really awkward. Yeah, so we've done practice where I've gone around the corner in her house and sung around the corner and then come back to sing in front of her. And yeah, she's like, when you're around the annoying thing is when I'm around the corner, I know I sound so much better because
Right.
I'm not tense.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, oh, that one, like, wow, that was great.
Yeah.
And yeah, then the moment that eyes are on me,
Mm.
I've tried a lot to try to tackle that.
Mm.
But my nervous system does it every single time. And I do appreciate if I did try to get out there and sing more in front of people.
Mm-hmm.
Many people suffer with like performance anxiety. I am sure if I was singing in front of people twice a week, every week, that some of that would improve.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of it is nervous system based that just takes over.
Yeah. So I've had similar things. Like it took me 4 goes to pass my driving test because I couldn't drive because somebody was watching me. And when I passed my
Yes.
test and drove by myself for the first time, I was like, oh, this is completely fine. Like this is easy. But yeah, kind of doing it with someone's eyes on me felt really stressful. But I feel like I've had other more work related things in recent years. And I've like really tried to work through them. I've talked about them in therapy. I talked about them in supervision. I've talked about them in my business coaching group. And people often seem to just come back to like imposter syndrome, but it feels deeper than that for me. It feels like deeper and much more unconscious and like harder to work with. And as you're talking, part of me's like my mind's popping off to, I guess kind of different psychotherapy theories. It's just horrible. It's just horrible when it happens. And that
Yeah.
frustration of like, I guess that part of you really just, so the part of you that recognizes when you go around the corner and you sound better, when you can let yourself go. So the frustration for that part to just not be able to access whatever's going on in another part that can't quite let go.
Yeah, and it's frustrating. I get frustrated
Mm,
at myself. I
mm,
actually did an audition a couple of years ago for a theatre company, which I did get a place on, but the song I sang was a genuinely big song, but I could sing it no problem. And I knew I sounded great. That's the other thing that's frustrating. I know I'm a good singer. I've done it for many years now.
mm-hmm,
So I knew this was a hard song, but I also knew I smashed the song and I wanted to sing it because I knew it would be an impressive song to sing.
mm-hmm.
And oh God, it just went so wrong.
Mm.
It really did. The nerves just took over. And yeah, it was not too bad by the end. But yeah, at the start. And then it's really hard not to get really frustrated at yourself because of how much it just doesn't feel in your control.
Yeah.
One of the things I was going to say, based on what you shared, is I've noticed two things for me where I'm comfortable being seen and where I'm not comfortable being seen.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have found a lot of my confidence and self worth through achievement,
Mm-hmm.
I have been comfortable being seen in academic settings, for example, like giving a presentation
Mm-hmm.
or raising my hand in class. Usually I'm having to say, maybe don't raise your hand again because you've done it quite a lot, Carly, usually in my head. Yeah, there are times when it relates, I think, to intelligence and knowing that I have something to offer here
Mm-hmm.
where I can put my hand up, where I can speak, and I don't mind that all eyes are on me. I can still get my heart rate up, but I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Because if anything, even though it gets my heart rate up, I then get some good feedback, for example, about what I've shared or what my idea is.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fine with being seen in a way that makes me feel intelligent,
Mm-hmm.
but that doesn't connect to the deeper core of who you are, the painful experiences that you've had in the past, the shame that you carry from experiences in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And when there is any sense of someone really seeing me, that's where the crippling sense of vulnerability comes in, because it's like it's people seeing straight through to the heart of you
Mm-hmm.
that you have come to believe
Mm-hmm.
is shameful, bad, embarrassing, that people aren't
Mm-hmm.
going to really like. People won't want to be a friend anymore. People will
Mm-hmm.
view you in a different light.
Mm-hmm.
Often, all the things you have spent many years trying to get people to not see.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's the part that for me relates to this episode.
Yeah. It's really interesting. Actually, I feel like it's slightly different for me in that because so much of my identity and my sense of self is built around being the clever one. You know, that's how I was positioned as a child. I find exposing myself in an academic way really hard because what if I open my mouth and say something and then all of that disappears? Maybe I don't know anything and it all
Yeah.
just disappears. And it was really strange at the weekend when I couldn't find my words because the section that I was talking about was curiosity, which is one of the main things about me as a person and as a therapist. And I couldn't find a single thing to say about it. It was a different experience for me, though, because I think I knew it was going to happen before it happened because I was so tired and because I was panicking about it happening. That probably made it worse.
Yes.
Um, um, but I really trusted that I was in a safe environment. So the people that I'm training with on my course are just so lovely and supportive, and we had a really lovely, supportive tutor as well. And I don't mean supportive in like a mushy way, but in a real way of like just like if you mess up, you mess up. You know, cool. We'll just deal with it. So like it doesn't have to become a big thing. And I felt like there was just something about that just allowed me to kind of hold myself because I knew there was a big risk that I would go, oh my gosh, because I'm the only qualified therapist on that master's as well. For me to go, oh my gosh, you're the one that's supposed to know what you're talking about. You're the one that's supposed to have all of this experience. The theories aren't actually new to me for this module either. So I really could have turned on myself in that moment. But I guess I anticipated that and was able to, it felt like putting a shield around me in a way of like, right, here comes the criticism and we're just going to hold like, no, that's not helpful. That's not helpful right now. It's okay. Someone else will talk and you can just keep yourself as calm as you can, and that's going to give you the best chance to say something else at the end, which I did manage to do. So that was nice.
Yeah. It sounds like you handled it well.
Yeah. But I guess it makes me think about, I guess the contract, you know, that being a safe environment and actually being able to turn it around and continue speaking also makes me think about the impact of other environments where it hasn't been safe to be vulnerable, where it hasn't been safe to be seen, where I've taken the risk to be myself and in some situations that's been obliterated. Not even just like, oh, I don't like that or a little bit of rejection, but yeah, full on character assassination, it can be hard then to keep putting yourself out there. And I think I think that can happen even if you haven't experienced the rejection or the harsh criticism. But if you see other people around you being on the receiving end of that or being the critical person,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
you
think
know,
that's a really good point, that it doesn't always have to be part of our own story where we've
yeah,
directly experienced that. But if
yeah,
you witness other people being shamed for that, judged for that,
yeah,
then yeah,
yeah,
you absolutely you take that on almost as part of your conditioning of the world. You know, when the world holds certain views,
yeah,
certain conditions, certain rules about what's acceptable and that's not acceptable, and how you're supposed to be, especially as women. Yeah,
yeah,
so many rules that does become internalized. If you've seen other people be attacked for that,
yeah.
then you're definitely going to try and not do that as well, because that looks like a horrible experience. I don't want to experience that.
Yeah. I see it in clients quite often. If they have parents that are critical of people behind their backs, that can produce a similar kind of thing. So if you've got parents that are always like, oh, did you see so and so? Oh, didn't she look awful? And oh, have you heard about him? Oh, what a loser. Even though it's not you being judged, I think it really makes you aware of how harshly people do judge people.
Mm-hmm.
And again, with anxious clients, you'll often get like, oh, people might judge. And I never try and argue that. Like, people judge, people are judgmental. Like, I even say it as therapists, because I think therapists like to describe themselves as non-judgmental. And I don't agree with that line. I think therapists are judgmental. But I think good therapists know that their judgments are about them. They're not about the people that they're judging,
Mm-hmm.
and that they're not actually to do with the client or whoever. I think it's important to stay out of that loop of like, oh, but what if people judge me? And like just I guess accept that people are going to judge you, but people will judge you whatever. People will judge you whatever you do. So I think often what people try and do is like water themselves down, but then you can become quite bland and then people might find that boring. So you really can't win. Like whatever you do, and I'm sure there's a quote out there, quite a famous one that says, people are going to judge you whatever you do, so you might as well be yourself. Easier said than done.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. And I think that is true. You can't get away from the fact that no matter what you do in life, somebody will be judging you, or hold a judgment over that. But as you say, very, very much easier said than done when you have spent so much of your life feeling desperate to be liked or to be seen a certain way.
Yeah.
It's almost having to get more comfortable with who you are so that you can then be more comfortable
Mm.
with the idea that people are going to judge you for it, because you can't be more comfortable with other people judging you when you are holding those very judgments of yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, how can you work to strip away your own judgments of self to then
Mm-hmm.
not care as much when other people are judging you for that? And I think that's so hard. What I'm holding in mind is that every person on the planet will relate to some extent to this episode.
Mm-hmm.
But there will be many people listening where this might dominate their daily experience.
Yeah.
And when you have experienced lots of bullying, when you've
Mm-hmm.
been ostracized, when you have felt different,
Mm-hmm.
if you've been very much perceived as different,
Mm-hmm.
and you've struggled with friendships and relationships, if you've had a lot of criticism growing up, you have enough of these experiences that this
Mm-hmm.
becomes your daily experience of
Yeah.
living with that shame, having that strong inner critic who judges you in the exact same way you imagine everybody else is judging you,
Mm-hmm.
and then trying so desperately hard for people to then not see all of that.
Yeah. It is so hard, isn't it? It really
And
is
it
hard.
makes me feel really sad.
Yeah.
Brings up
Yeah.
so much sadness in me.
Yeah. I'm just going back to what I said, where I'm saying like you might as well be yourself. And the reason that I went so quickly to easier said than done is that it is really hard. And I suppose I feel like there's a point that I was trying to make around the futility of trying to be anything else.
Yeah.
Like you can't ever feel accepted or liked or loved or anything if you're not being yourself. Because even if you manage to pull off, with the exhaustion and just how exhausting it is to try and be somebody else or be different to how you really are, even if you manage to pull it off, then any positive feedback you get is positive feedback of the mask that you're putting on, not of you. So then the positive feedback can reinforce the pain that you feel underneath.
Yeah, yeah. I will often suggest an exercise to people where you write down, I am only acceptable when, dot, dot,
Mm.
dot.
Mm-hmm.
And then you write down all the thoughts, all the rules that come to your mind, where it's only possible for you to be accepted by other people when you're doing all of these things. And it's amazing how many rules that we might have for ourselves that we might not even realize until we intentionally try to look at that. And there
Yeah.
can be so many around physical appearance, body type, the career we've got, the way we live our life, the way we are as a person, our personality.
Mm-hmm.
It just covers a whole spectrum of different ways in which we feel like we need to be different.
Mm. Yeah. So where I want to go now in this conversation is about, so how did we get on top of dealing with feeling vulnerable? And I suppose there is something that I wanted to say in this episode around, I guess around the idea that I don't think being comfortable with vulnerability is a place that you get to and then you can just manage it all of the time. That things can happen, life events can happen that unsettle you again. It's harder to feel vulnerable. That's certainly something that I've been working through. And actually, it was what triggered it for me this time. I had no idea was going to happen, right? It wasn't like it was some predictable life event that was going to happen. It has really kind of really unsettled me and had me thinking again of like, what does this mean for me and how comfortable I am? So actually, as we're doing this episode, I feel like I'm very actively working on taking really good care of myself, really, watching out for that inner critic that had become loud again. So I suppose it feels like there's something important about if you feel like you've done this work before and then you've found yourself going round and you're like, oh, I'm back here again, really uncomfortable, that you're not the only one feeling like that.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good point because I feel like there are some people who could do this work and largely get to a point where they're comfortable
Mm.
being seen.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there are those of us that can do this work in a way that is an ongoing process.
Mm-hmm.
And things will happen where we might need to re examine.
Mm-hmm.
And there might be parts of us where we might always find that difficult. And I'm especially speaking to people who maybe have a lot of relational trauma,
Mm-hmm.
that being seen in relationships is going to be difficult.
Mm-hmm.
If we're living with complex PTSD, if we're neurodivergent and have experienced a lot of rejection and harm,
Mm.
then I think fear of being seen, of being perceived, might be something that never fully goes away.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that has to be like a hopeless thought or anything like that. I
Mm-hmm.
think instead it can be helpful to know that this is something that we might always find challenging, but it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
mean we can't work on it. And there might be times where it feels better than others.
Mm-hmm.
Some people have spaces where it genuinely would not be safe
Mm-hmm.
to allow yourself to be truly seen in that space. It might actually be dangerous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's an important part of feeling more comfortable with being vulnerable is figuring out who it's safe to be vulnerable with and where it's safe to be vulnerable. And some spaces are going to be much better than others. And it might be that is real trial and error, that you try it and it doesn't go how you hope, and that is really hard. But that there will be spaces where you can be vulnerable, where you can be yourself, and it goes well.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the more experiences we have when it goes well, then the more and more comfortable we can get with being really seen
Mm-hmm.
as ourselves, as our messy, insecure selves. And there aren't people that will run from that. I think some people just really have this belief that if people knew their real me, they'd run a mile. They wouldn't want to stick around. They wouldn't want to be my friend. They wouldn't want to be my partner anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is really difficult. But we just take small steps
Mm-hmm.
with people that we identify as people that we trust enough
Mm-hmm.
to try this out with.
Yeah. So, yes, small steps. And that also takes me to thinking about trauma dumping and I guess the nuance around that, I have definitely noticed a lot more, both in and outside of my practice, of people being too scared to say what's going on for them in case it's trauma dumping. And I think
Yes.
that is really problematic. And I
Mm-hmm.
think even with trauma dumping, it makes somebody who has experienced something awful the problem.
Yeah.
I feel really kind of cautious, skeptical about the idea of trauma dumping at all. I think for
Yeah.
me, it falls in a similar category to attention seeking.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. The problem is with the idea of trauma dumping. And I also think there's a problem with the way in which trauma dumping seems to have been interpreted.
Mm,
Whereas people think trauma dumping is I can't tell people about my problems and I can't tell people about the things that I've experienced in the past.
mhm,
Rather than just being mindful of suddenly telling someone very explicit details of harm that has been caused to you,
mhm,
which, when unexpected,
mhm.
can be really difficult to just suddenly hear and know about.
Yeah.
But I think that it's not been taken that way. It's been taken, I can't tell people about stuff that's happened to me in my life
Yeah.
because I'm then trauma dumping.
Mhm. I think even with, and we might disagree on this, but I think even where somebody is suddenly coming out with explicit details of some, that may well trigger the person listening, that there's something about this person being in desperate need of connection that I think it's quite unlikely that somebody would do that with an intention of causing harm. I would see that person as somebody who was in a lot of distress and needed more support. And there's something around boundary holding, so that might be the person listening being able to say sooner, like, I might not be the best person to listen to this for you. And I can feel, even as I'm saying it, like this searching for how do we make it neat? And and we can't. There are going to be times where we say things that overwhelm someone else, or where we hear something that someone else is saying that overwhelms us. I suppose what I hope for is, how do we handle any of those situations in a way that is as helpful as possible for everybody involved?
Definitely. Yeah.
And I know that I'm not saying this without bias. I think when I was younger, I probably did stuff that would be accused of as trauma dumping or oversharing or whatever. But partly that was a rebellion against the idea that we should just keep calm and carry on and don't make a fuss. It was breaking out of that pattern, which was really important for me. But also that I really lacked support. I really
Mm.
lacked support. I hadn't had good guidance around who would be safe to share that with, who might be dangerous to share that with. And I've certainly shared
Mm.
things with people and they've used them against me.
Yep.
And they've been really hard lessons. But yeah, like I feel quite strongly about it, the same as I feel really strongly about attention seeking, and that I see that as connection seeking, like whatever it is. If somebody is doing something that is attention seeking, there is a problem underneath that needs addressing.
Mm-hmm.
And that to dismiss it is just making the problem worse. That's not to say we should just take on everything that people are telling us, and we'll get to that in a couple of episodes. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. My issue with both of those things is that it positions the problem within that person.
Yeah.
And that's the part that I don't like or agree with, rather than a collective responsibility, both in terms of consent and boundaries.
Mm.
Yeah, which is why I'm just not keen on that phrase or talking about it in that way.
Mm.
But there are so many times, not even just trauma dumping, but where people say something and then suddenly feel like they've said too much. And then there's
Mm.
that panic and wanting to
Mm.
claw it back.
Mhm.
Or maybe we've done something that feels like we've shown too much. It comes back to too much, doesn't it? It's like
Yeah.
this, it always comes back to this fear of being too much. Now they've seen me and now I've got to claw it back. And then the
Mm.
shame that just floods the body. And then likely the post-socializing rumination that then occurs about, why did I do that? Why did I say that? oh, now what
Mm.
are people going to be thinking? Oh, they're not going to want me to come next time. And then going over and over those conversations in your mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's taking me right back to when we first met. Like my first memory of you. Oh, no, it can't be my first memory of you. But fairly early on, you said, I remember you saying, like, oh, yeah, I really like Alice. She sounds like she knows what she's talking about. But when I'd been talking, actually, what I was going through is what you just described there is like me saying something and then being like, oh my gosh, why did I say that? Why did I open my mouth? Why didn't I just stay on mute? Yeah, it's so hard. It's so uncomfortable. Uncomfortable doesn't even cover it, does it? It's excruciating. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is excruciating. It's like you just don't even want to be in your skin anymore.
Right. Right.
It's that classic wanting the ground to open up
Yeah.
and swallow you whole. But of course, in order to be seen,
Mm-hmm.
someone has to be doing the seeing. So this is all relational.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So anytime we're talking about this, we're talking about it in the context of relationships
Mm-hmm.
and how we feel.
Mm-hmm.
How safe ultimately we feel in those relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And that can lead to so much social anxiety, social isolation, withdrawing from people, doing something that fills you with shame and then dropping off from people.
Mm-hmm.
People sometimes might even do something that they panic about in terms of, oh, almost now I've been seen, now I've been caught out. I might literally never contact that person ever again. Gone.
Yeah.
And keep re-entering and leaving relationships and over and over again. So I guess there's the more really damaging end where people then struggle to maintain relationships and are in out. And then for those people who are able to maintain relationships, but they bring about a lot of anxiety.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah. So because of that, the problem then doesn't just become about being seen. It's then the hypervigilance that comes about monitoring ourselves to not be seen. And particularly if we are more sensitive, if our nervous systems are more attuned to the environment around us, then we're going to be more aware of facial expressions. We're going to be more aware of tone. We're going to be more aware of body language. We might not even be aware of how much we are really scanning to watch for other people's reactions to what we have said or what we have done and trying to infer meaning from that.
Yeah. And the negative slant that we can put on things if we've been through difficult experiences in the past. I often talk about it, about wearing grey tinted glasses. People might talk about wearing rose tinted glasses and seeing things as better than they are. I think about wearing grey tinted glasses and seeing things as worse than they are. And I know I can recognize that for myself, that, you know, looking around and finding negativity, even when it might not be there. And I think I'm somebody that can be quite expressive with face gestures, body language. But I also have experiences of people misinterpreting that as well and, you know, assuming something negative that isn't necessarily there. I've mentioned before about eye rolling. I didn't realize how much I roll my eyes until we started this podcast. But yeah, I guess that's important to hold in mind as well, that if you're scanning for danger, you may well find it, even when it's not really there.
Yeah, well, someone could pull a subtle facial expression for so many different reasons, but if you've just spoken,
Yeah.
you're going to see that's related to what you've just said.
Yeah.
And likely then experience that sort of crippling sense of shame or self-doubt or embarrassment. And that little face they pulled could have been about something totally unrelated. So I agree with you. It makes you hyper aware, but then your hyper awareness means that you pick up on everything and you're going to view it through those grey tinted glasses.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then you can get stuck in a loop, you know, or be spiraling down.
Yeah. It's like if you ever, when you say something and then you've said the thing and then a lull in the conversation follows straight after something you've just said. And it's a bit like, oh, like it's so uncomfortable. And then you think it's all just related to what you said.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas it could be you've said something really interesting and people are pondering on it.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. Or it's just come to its natural conclusion.
Yeah.
But things take on a different meaning when you're already coming at it from an anxious, threat seeking place.
Yeah. I suppose there's something here, and we have already touched on it, is about that inner voice. But I think that is a critical piece of the work. Like whether you're in therapy and doing it, or, you know, outside of therapy, working through things on your own, I don't think it's possible to be more comfortable being vulnerable or being seen if you've got a strong inner critic going on in your mind. I think it's like a central piece. There's no way to move forward. Sounds a bit absolutist, which I don't like to be,
No, I
but
think
I
it's
think it is.
essential. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So really building up the relationship with your inner critic, and getting to grips with what's going on in that part of you. And I think it's almost one of the things that I love the most about being a therapist is meeting all the different inner critics, all the different ways that they can show up, and they're all so different. The ways that they work, the buttons that they press, the little techniques that they have to keep you small. I could just feel like a little collection of them in my mind, the different ones that I've worked with over all of the years. And there's part of me at the moment that feels a bit eye rolly about your inner critics just trying to protect you. I think it's lots of therapists using ChatGPT on social media are clearly using the same scripts because I see it a lot. And it's true. It's not that I'm saying that it's not true, but it can feel, I don't even know what the word is, but like it can annoying. I think the word's annoying, actually. I think it could just feel annoying being told that your inner critic's trying to help you when it feels on the inside like it's just trying to tear you down.
Yeah.
So I think another part of working with your inner critic, so, building up the relationship, figuring out, what job does it think it's trying to do in your life. I think another part of it can be about setting internal boundaries with it. And different people work with this in different ways. And so, like, the first way I was told to work with it was to almost be argumentative with it, and to be like, to almost try and overpower it, I think, to be like, I'm not listening to you, and oh, just F off. And so, but that has never worked for me. The only thing that's ever really worked is just a really short, like, non-engagement with it, of just like, that isn't helpful. That isn't helpful for me right now. Like,
Mm-hmm.
no, I'm not, we're not doing that today. And because any attempt to convince it or argue with it, it will come back bigger and stronger.
Mm.
So I think having that ability to, to disengage from it, to just be like, I hear what you're saying, I know where you're coming from, and not today. We're doing something different today.
Yeah. Whereas I know people find different things helpful,
Mm.
but from my perspective, you can't work on your critical voice without working on your compassionate voice.
Mm. Yeah.
And so you can argue with it, shut it out, put boundaries in it, make friends with it, all you want.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the counterbalance? Where's the part that can offer something
Yeah.
different?
And this
Yeah.
is so challenging. And I feel like it really shouldn't be. Like, why should it be hard to be nice to yourself?
Mm.
um,
Yeah.
but people find it really, really hard. Like, even just the word compassion, lots of people don't like it. I know that I've said this on previous episodes, but people see it as like wishy-washy. They're there. Don't worry about it. And I don't. And I've said before, like, I see compassion as the gritty ability to stay with the discomfort of being human, essentially. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
It's hard for me to pinpoint what has been helpful for me because I think it has been lots of different things. But I've just felt like for most of my life, people have both taken and I've allowed to be taken pieces of me.
Mm,
And people take enough pieces
mm,
that there's nothing of you left
mm,
because it's okay, I can't be like this and I can't be like that, and it's not good to be like this. You act like that, it's embarrassing. Boys won't fancy you, when you're younger if you're like
mm.
this.
Yeah.
Friends won't invite you to the party if you're not doing this. This is
Mm-hmm.
where all of these conditions come in that in order to be acceptable, I must or I must not.
Mm-hmm.
You add enough rules in and you're stripping away parts of who you are over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of just the notion one day that
Mm,
I'm just like a tiny fragment
mm,
that's just left.
mm,
And just this sense of no, I'm not.
Mm.
I'm not allowing fragments of myself to be stripped anymore and to become so small
Mm-hmm.
that the rebellious part feels a bit strong. It wasn't that I just came charging in on a horse, like determined to claw all my pieces back or anything. It was a bit more quieter than that, but a bit rebellious. A bit like it was like a no, enough is enough now. Do you know? I think it
Mm.
just came from the desire to just want to have some peace, to just not have
Yeah.
all of this stuff going around in my head all the time, all of this pressure, all of these ways of being. And because
Mm.
I have had and adopted so many rules over my lifetime,
Mm.
that no, I need to claw all of those parts back.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
then I need to allow them to be seen by other people.
Yeah. Just as you were talking, it made me think about almost like scales tipping. So, like, as you're trying to live by all of these rules and all of these fragments are disappearing, it's like the pain of rejection is higher. Like, I'd rather shrink myself, give up these fragments, change, because the thought of being rejected feels even worse. And then, like, reaching a point where the scales tip, and then the pain of not being able to be yourself, the pain of self abandonment gets higher. And it's just exhausting. I feel like I can't emphasize that enough. Trying to be somebody that you're not to fit in or be liked is one of the most tiring things I have ever done. And so I'm going through it again. I'm going through another layer of it again, but I can remember from previous times where I've worked through it and I've been able to be more authentic again. Just the weight lifting, just the weight lifting of being like, yeah, no, this is how I am. This is how I am.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
working with self abandonment is work that I so enjoy. It's something I'm really passionate about and have so much emotions about because it
Mm.
relates to my own lived experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's just I didn't have that word for it,
Yeah.
self abandonment. And it's something that I really want to start to talk about more and raise more awareness of because
Yeah.
there's not enough information out there yet to help give people that label that
Yeah.
what we'll ultimately end up doing is self abandonment. Very much not in a blamey way, like this is
Yeah.
our fault way.
Yeah.
But self abandonment is just stripping those pieces away, 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 away. And
Yeah.
there reaches a point where I like the way you took that and related that to the scales because I think
Mm.
that was bang on.
Yeah.
Yeah, there
Yeah.
reaches a point where it's like, I don't want to abandon myself anymore.
Yeah. And I think the fact that, we don't notice that we're doing it or that we don't have words to talk about it and that society doesn't really talk about it and doesn't really have words to talk about it. I think that is a reflection of how normal it is to self-abandon, to
Mm-hmm.
fit in. And I guess this is the societal shift from, away from the collective towards the individual. And it feels actually at the moment like we're going back, like away from individual, and the importance of the collective is being highlighted again. Yeah, that we don't have the language for it is, yeah, just because it's so normal. It happens so much. It's almost expected. And there is a balance. We're not talking about, this is another thing that comes up a lot, is I think people get scared that if they start being themselves, they'll become arrogant or a bit like a diva. I hear that a lot as well.
Or selfish.
Yeah, selfish. Yeah, any of those words, which probably come from having been around people that, yeah, take up, I don't want to say take up too much space. I feel like that's almost like we can't really say that on a podcast about being too much. But I mean about being around people who don't care if they impact people in a negative way. Maybe that's more what I
Mm,
mean.
yeah.
Yeah, that can be a real fear as well, but that it doesn't tend to be grounded in reality. That actually the people that are afraid of that are thoughtful, caring. They've got all of these qualities in them that would prevent them from becoming arrogant. That they've got plenty of room to take up more space, to be more themselves, without having to worry about that. And the reality is, and I know we've talked about this before as well, when you start being more yourself, you may lose relationships, you may lose friendships, romantic relationships, parental relationships. That may well happen. And that is really sad. And there's nothing flippant in there. For me, it's hard. It is really hard. And it can be a difficult balance between yeah, how much do you give up? How much do you conform? How much do you be yourself?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
mm.
Oh, before we end, what changes can people make to stop trying to control so much about how they're perceived?
That feels like an enormous question. So I think the first thing that comes to mind for me, which probably isn't necessarily a beginning point, but I'm going to say it anyway, is about becoming aware of how much you're expecting negative feedback. That if you're afraid of judgment, I mean, judgment includes positive judgment. So I think sometimes it can be helpful to look at, so if your mind is automatically going to the worst case scenario, you know, what's the worst outcome of being more myself, is to look at what's the best case scenario as well. And having had so much positive feedback over the last 6 months, part of me almost wants to go back several years and live my life again and
Right.
start taking more risks sooner to get more of the positive feedback sooner.
Mm.
But so to be aware of how much you're anticipating negative and start to question what might the positive feedback as well, just to kind of bring some balance to your thought pattern. And just to be aware that when you hide yourself away, you're missing out on that positive feedback. And there's so many wonderful things about you because there are so many wonderful things about everybody.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you really take the time to get to know people, they're amazing. They're amazing. And yeah, I think one thing that I found really helpful, which was quite challenging, was when I read something that said, it was talking about that feeling of like, who do you think you are? Like, who do you think you are to put yourself out there, to say this, to take up space, whatever? Like, who are you to not? Who are you to hide away all these things that make you you? Society needs you. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a really nice sentiment. Well, you highlighted something important there, that there needs to be a willingness to take risk. That can feel like a big, scary thing, but there are things that we perceive to be higher risk and things that we perceive to be lower risk,
Mm.
where maybe we could be okay if that thing doesn't quite go to plan. And
Yeah.
so, what are the things that we deem to be lower risk? Because trust me, lower risk can still be very scary. But where is a starting point where you might start to take a little bit more risk, where you might have small moments where you try to actually be honest about your feelings, about your perspective, about your opinion,
Mm-hmm.
particularly if you might disagree with what somebody said, and where you might try to be open and say, oh, well, actually, I see it like this.
Mm.
So, small moments of just trying to be a little bit more honest in your responses, and then recognize that once you have done that, there will likely be a moment of panic that follows. That doesn't mean you're getting it wrong. It's not going to feel good straight away. It's going into things knowing that you'll feel scared before, you may well feel panicky after, but can you sit with that and offer comfort in yourself that that doesn't mean you've gotten anything wrong, that this is how it will feel for a while and it gets better the more that you do it.
Yeah. Mm.
And equally, sometimes you really do just have to go for things in a bigger way, like
Mm-hmm.
start posting on your business social media, start a podcast, sing in front of people, which I have done a few times over the years. Not enough to change anything, but I have done it. Just being aware of our comfort zone and sometimes how small we may have ended up making the world around us, and where we can just start to test those edges.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 I think there's something about finding the right way for you, isn't there? That there are so many ways that you can explore and experiment. I think sometimes it can make it worse if someone else thinks that you should do something a certain way and you feel like you can't do that either. So yeah, just be open to trying different things, seeing what works, take it like an experiment, see what happens.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
And before we close, I'd be really keen for people to let us know if they like the idea of coming to a live episode.
Yeah.
So, whether you comment on whatever podcast platform that you listen on, whether you comment on a post on social media, or whether you email us at toomuchapparently@gmail.com. Yeah, it would be great to know if this is something that people would love to do and attend.
Yeah, I'll put a story up on Instagram with a poll as well, so you can come and vote on there.
Yeah, amazing. Okay. Well, if you've ever felt exposed for simply being honest, you're not alone.
Being scared to be seen usually makes a lot of sense given your story.
And maybe being seen isn't something you leap into, maybe it's something you practice slowly.
Next time, we're talking about too passionate to play it cool, loving things deeply, hobbies, interests, ideas, and why enthusiasm is not embarrassing, it's joyful and connective.
But for now, we'll leave you with this. Where in your life are you hiding a part of yourself that actually wants to be known? And what would one tiny step toward being seen look like this week?
That's all from us today. If this episode made you feel a bit less alone, the best way to help us reach more people is to subscribe, rate the podcast, and follow Too Much Apparently on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube.
Those simple clicks help other sensitive humans find us when they need it most. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back soon.